The purpose of this podcast is to educate and to inform. This is not a substitute for professional medical care and is not intended for use in the diagnosis or treatment of individual conditions. Guests on this podcast express their own opinions, experience, and conclusions. The mention of any product, service, organization, activity, or therapy should not be construed as an ASCO endorsement.
Welcome to this ASCO in Action podcast. This is ASCO's podcast series where we explore policy and practice issues that impact oncologists, the entire cancer care delivery team, and the individuals we care for, people with cancer. My name is Clifford Hudis, and I'm the CEO of ASCO, and I serve as the host of the ASCO in Action podcast series. For today's podcast, I just want to give our listeners a quick update on what is every year a much anticipated announcement by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or CMS. This is the 2019 Medicare Physician Fee Schedule, and recently CMS released its proposed rule for 2019, commonly referred to as the Physician Fee Schedule. You may not be familiar with what this is. I'm sure some of you are, but for those of you who are not, the Physician Fee Schedule is a complete listing of all the fees used by Medicare to pay doctors or other providers and suppliers. This comprehensive listing of fee maximums is updated every year, and it's used to reimburse a physician or other providers on a fee-for-service basis. It differentiates the reimbursement rates for different medical specialties as well. Now, at ASCO, we always review this proposed rule very closely because it's important to understand how it might impact our members and then, through them, ultimately, the beneficiaries of Medicare, our patients. The bottom line for this year is that CMS estimates in 2019 that there will be a negative 4% reduction in reimbursement for hematology and oncology specialty services, and there will be a negative 2% reduction in radiation oncology. Now, this, of course, can become very technical, but fundamentally, these reductions reflect a statutory adjustment factor related to the Medicare Access and CHIP Reauthorization Act, which you may know as MACRA, and also the relative value units, or RVUs, of specific CPT codes. The actual impact on individual physician practices yet will depend on the mix of services that any specific practice actually provides. Nonetheless, it is very worrisome to us that under Medicare Part B this year, CMS is also proposing to reimburse new drugs and drugs that do not yet have an average sales price, or ASP, at wholesale acquisition cost, or WAC, plus 3%. Right now, Part B drugs are currently reimbursed at this wholesale acquisition cost, or WAC, plus 6%. So these cuts really represent a serious concern for us at ASCO, and we are outlining our concerns for CMS in comments to the agency while the proposal's open comment period is operative. Now, this closes on September 10th, so you see we're busy right now in these weeks preparing our response and getting it in before that deadline. Our goal is to make sure that the agency fully understands how these cuts, both in physician fees and in Part B drug reimbursement, could impact oncology practices. Beyond this, I want to talk a little bit about the impact on the Quality Payment Program. The rule proposes changes to the Quality Payment Program, or QPP, for 2019, and we're still analyzing the proposal and trying to fully assess its potential impact on the oncology community. But one key update for cancer care providers is in the Merit-Based Incentive Payment System, or MIPS. This is one of two QPP tracks, and the change that we're concerned about is how the performance categories are weighted and the effect that has on the overall score that a practitioner must achieve to avoid a negative payment adjustment. For 2019, the QPP proposal would weight MIPS quality category at 45% of a provider or practice's total score. And this used to be 50%, so it's a little bit of a reduction in terms of the proportion that is attributed to the quality category. In terms of electronic record interoperability, this is called promoting interoperability, and it used to be called advancing care information / meaningful use. Many of you are familiar with that meaningful use term. This will remain at 25%. The improvement activity remains as it was at 15%, but the cost category increases from 10% up to 15%. So that's where the missing 5% is being added back in. The performance threshold is also slated to go up to 30 points from 15 in order to avoid a negative payment adjustment. And the MIPS performance period will now be 12 months starting January 1st, 2019. So we are, as I say, still analyzing the potential impact of these changes on our members' reimbursement, and we will update you as we understand this in greater detail. My goal for today was simply to provide you with a summary at a high level of the proposed 2019 Physician Fee Schedule, and I hope this is a useful introduction to this always interesting and challenging annual update. At ASCO, we remain very concerned that the CMS proposal could harm Medicare beneficiaries who have cancer, of course, by triggering major cuts to physician reimbursement, especially for the Part B drugs, and especially beyond that, for those drugs that have been newly introduced to the market. This could make an already turbulent cancer care delivery system even more unstable. We're concerned that these cuts might hinder patient access to some of the newer and innovative therapies, and it might therefore stall some of the progress that we're making against cancer technically right now. This in turn will make it more difficult for oncologists to provide some of the essential services they must provide to patients with cancer. Always, our goal is to ensure that oncologists are able to provide the right treatment to the right patient at the right time, and we are concerned that these payment cuts as well as Part B cuts might be an impediment to that, and we are concerned about the impact on our members and their patients. If you want to learn more about the Physician Fee Schedule, I encourage you to visit ASCO in Action's website at asco.org/ASCOAction. We have a link to the proposed rule there, and we will also share our comments to CMS on that page. I hope this is helpful. If you have questions about this, I hope you'll contact us. And until next time, I just want to thank you for listening to this ASCO in Action podcast.